This is eCoffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
All right. Victor, you describe Edamam as organizing the world's food knowledge. What does that actually mean technically? Like, help me picture what it takes to build a database of 5 million recipes and a million foods that are analyzed at that depth.
Right. You have to understand what building, organizing the world's food knowledge is by looking at what the goal is. And our goal has always been to help people eat better. And to help people eat better, they need to make the right choices, which means they have to have accurate, reliable data on the fly, which means that you have to have every piece of food and nutrition data that's out there. So those are recipes, those are restaurant meals, those are foods that you buy in grocery stores, and then understand their nutrient content, understand their diet applicability, allergen applicability, chronic condition, treatment or prevention applicability, all of that. So this is what our vision is. Organize every meal that's out there with deep data structures. So when people say, oh, what should I eat? We have already answer. Obviously, there's a lot of personalization that needs to happen. Or if people want to log food, we know what that food is. We don't need to, guess it now and figure it out. So that's the goal. And so that's how we went about organizing the database. And that's what underlying the database is that powers our technology.
And this is, the company is over a decade old, almost two, if I'm not mistaken. It's
tough. 1.5.
1.5, yeah, 15 years or so. And you mentioned just before the call that big publications are linking back to you and you guys don't have an issue getting high authority citations and backlinks. Since this is mostly a marketing podcast, people are wondering how they can do that organically. We talk about earned media, earned links, earned citation. How do you go about putting your research out there and putting the data that comes from Edamam? How do you go about putting it out there visible enough so that high authority sites can link back to you?
Yeah. So we've done one unique thing, which is different, and it's particular to our business. But essentially, when we go and do a deal with, say, New York Times Cooking and Food Network or Microsoft or Bing, we provide data to them, and we generally cut significantly our price by asking them to do powered by Edamam with a link back to us from every single recipe or food that we provide our data for. Most companies, 99% of companies, take that deal because they have limited budgets. And so we essentially help them get in their budgets. And it's not that big of a deal from the perspective of a product manager or a business development person to put that link and link back to us. Now, because of that, we generate, first of all, recognition. If somebody says powered by Edamam on New York Times Cooking, I say, oh, look, the top recipe site is using them, we should use them as well. But it's also helping when, Google crawls and sees links back to us. So that is the unique thing. Other than that, I think what's happened is we've been just out there mostly without publishing research papers and, specific content and blog posts, but doing lots of what I'm doing now, interviews, conferences, discussions. Those tend, once put on social media, those tend to have very high impact on traffic.
Yeah.
So, and, when you do that year in, year out for 15 years, I would say that I probably have 120 to 130 appearances.
Yeah.
So those add up.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself like obviously the founder, but do you see yourself as like a founder-led brand, like the face of the company?
I try not to, but for obvious reasons, I have become that just because I'm, essentially the sales and marketing team and the business development and whatnot, especially early in the company. So the person that kind of can the most, in the most easy way, communicate the strategy, the vision, what we're fighting for, discuss industry trends, all that stuff. So I've always been out there. I've always put the company first instead of me first, but people recognize me as well, which is, it feeds into it's a benefit for the company. It definitely feeds in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is what we talk about with the age of LLMs and the chatbots and AI SEO. Everyone is still trying to figure out how do we get the LLMs to cite us. And the difference between Google and LLMs is Google is looking for content at different angles, but LLMs take that a step further in a way to kind of like and get cited with LLMs is net new content, which can only come from personal experiences, expert interviews, proprietary data sets. So it makes sense that someone like you who is leading the company and publishing these, you have tons and tons of data points and data sets, and that's what the company is. It
Right.
makes sense that your organic traffic is not a challenge for you. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
not a challenge for us. I mean, look, we've spent zero on outbound marketing. We spent very little on Google search, and for the most part, everything. Lots of our clients come from inbound marketing, inbound
Hmm.
traffic, and this is all people discovering us either through chatbots or through traditional search engines. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it hasn't been a problem.
Yeah, but you're primarily B2B now,
Right.
like B2B data, but it wasn't always like that. You were doing a direct to consumer model, but now
Mhm.
that it's switched to like a B2B data infrastructure, I guess layer for the entire food and health sector. What made you make that call, and like was it painful to give up that consumer facing sort of brand identity?
It wasn't painful. We started as a direct to consumer company because just going back to our vision, help everybody eat better. We said, okay, well, let's
Yeah.
organize this food and let's help people, find the right recipes with the right nutrition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we had some traction. We had like 800,000 and whatnot, but it wasn't essentially monetizable. So we start looking at business models that actually monetize. And
Hmm.
serendipitously, that was at the time where some businesses actually came to us and said, looks like you have interesting data. Can we buy it? And
Mm.
said, well, okay, well, it sounds like, there is a business model there. So we productized our technology to offer it through APIs and licensed data sets, and rest is history. I mean, it's one of those, just listen to the market, make a pivot when you need to, and that's it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we still measure the impact of how many people we reach. It also ties with our strategy because to meet people where they make decisions about food, they make them everywhere in grocery stores, in
Hmm.
restaurants, in green markets, talking to their significant other, whatever. If we can meet them there, then we have impact on their life. So based on our clients, we think that we reach easily over 1 billion people with our data, which is something that's very rewarding in its own right.
Hey, we hope you're enjoying the coffee and the conversation so far. This show is powered by Digital Web Solutions, and if you've ever wondered how the biggest brands actually build authority, this is it. DWS has a massive network of over 250,000 publishers, real sites that help you rank on Google, and more importantly, stay visible in AI search. It's the heavy lifting most teams just can't do on their own. As a thank you for listening, they're offering an exclusive free strategy call just for our eCoffee listeners. It's a great way to map out your authority plan for 2026. Just click the link below to book yours and see how they can help scale your brand. All right, now let's get back to the show. And to measure the company's success, not on necessarily revenue, we know that revenue will come, but measuring it on impact, I think that takes a certain type of person to lead a company in that direction and putting
Yeah.
impact first.
Yeah, it also is experience. I mean, look, I've been over 33, 4 years entrepreneur, 4 different startups. At
Hmm.
some point, you realize, why am I doing this? If you don't
Mm.
have a visual impact in the world, it's probably not worthwhile. It's like, when you're 110, you're that bad, you're not going to be, oh, I made $1 billion. You'll be like, oh, I impacted 1 billion people.
Mm.
That would
Yeah.
be different. So, and then, everything kind of arranges around that.
You said being 110 on your deathbed, which if someone doesn't know you heard that, they might just breeze over it, but I wanna sink my teeth into that a little bit. You talk about
Sure.
living past 100, living to 120, and that food is the ultimate medicine. Our
Right.
especially in the US, the healthcare system is reactive and it's a treatment system, not a prevention system.
Right.
I'm curious, based on all the data you've had, on all the experiences that you've had, do you intend to live to 120?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to eat your own dog food. And look, I've done enough of spiritual practice and whatnot. So if I get hit by a car tomorrow, I've lived a good life and it's all
Yeah.
good. But, I fully intend to be free of chronic condition with, my full mental capability until the last moment. And I do believe that 120 is achievable because
Yeah.
other humans have done it.
Yeah.
So it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one of those. And everything is progressing that in addition to just a healthy lifestyle, which is needed, there might be treatments, even if you do get a disease, there might be treatments that help you with some of the chronic conditions or anything that happens that help you prolong your life in a not a decrepit state, but actually fully functional.
Yeah. I was listening to Outlive by Peter Attia
Mhm.
a
Right.
while back, a couple months ago. I haven't finished it yet, but it's a phenomenal read. And
Sure. Yeah.
he talks about essentially the fast death, I think is what it's called. Instead of
Right.
like the end of your life, the last 20 or so years, you're just slowing down with chronic diseases and dying slowly. He's saying you should have a longer health span and then die quickly, whether that's by being hit by a car or like, by doing something crazy like jumping out of an airplane. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to cause you that by physical destruction. I mean, I think
sure.
you can be, the body goes through a natural process of death, but you can be fully functional and with it when you die.
Hmm.
And, if you're very progressed individual, you may kind of, go meditate and kind of die in your meditation type of thing.
Yeah.
But, that's for another conversation.
Yeah, right. That's the which I want to get into because as you can see, I'm sporting the yogi bun and beard. I'm trying to be as zen as possible. I even wore this
But
shirt specifically
you
for
have the
you,
look.
Victor. Yeah, it says work on you for you. I wore it specifically for this
Okay.
conversation. But did you have like a kind of like a spiritual, I suppose, awakening, if you want to call it that, because you weren't always in health, nutrition, longevity. You've had an interesting career path, and I'm wondering if there's like a change of heart, a change of soul.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tried, but I did have a very successful entrepreneurial career. I built Bulgaria's largest internet company, sold it, moved back to the States, and then realized that my life wasn't going the right way. I mean, I had get a lot of pounds. It was like starting to bald. I was,
Mm,
stressed.
mhm.
And took a year off and went on kind of on a health journey, lost a bunch of pounds, detox, started sleeping better, eating better, et cetera, et cetera. But at some point, as I was doing that, I realized there was something big missing. And, what
Mm,
tradition is known as the God sized hole.
mm,
So it's like, that kind of lack in your balance, so physically you're well, mentally you're well, but there is something lacking. And so that was it. And, I just followed my instincts, started with the very basics, listen, did TM, then listened to some Shaivism podcasts, and then started talking to people. I started experimenting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually I ended up with Kundalini yoga. I studied
mm,
that. I became a teacher, experimented with hollow breath, breathing, breath work. I've experimented with psychedelics, all that stuff. But that is to say, there was no like a moment of awakening. There was like a gradual path, and at some point, and I know it's easier said than done, but at some point, it's like you become the path, and there's like nothing to
mm.
seek. That's yeah. So
Yeah.
you
I
just
mean,
live. That's it.
yeah, yeah. We call it a spiritual journey for a reason. Doesn't end.
Right, right, right. Well, then you realize that there is nobody to do the journey anyway. So I don't know why, why is that happening, but anyway, it's
Yeah, you and I will have to connect on ayahuasca experiences. I had my first one last year. It was absolutely life-changing, phenomenal. And one of the biggest things that changed for me health-wise is I started sleeping better. And I actually woke up
excellent.
for 6 months after that. For 6 months after the experience, I was up at 5 a.m without a problem. And I was going to bed at like 8, 9, and then going to the gym at 6 a.m.
Perfect.
And what I found is that sleep schedule actually reflected positively
Yeah.
in my cravings and in my diet. How does, maybe you can share, how does sleep and diet go hand in hand?
No, it's a very straightforward connection. I mean, look, everybody has a circadian rhythm. Most people were um, guided by the sun, obviously. Most people are kind of like, 9, 10 p.m., go to bed, get up at 5, 6. Some are like you. I'm the same way when I'm in, for example, California. It's just like, time zones is somewhat artificial, right? It's where you are in relation to the sun. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so most people are like that. There are people obviously that are not night owls, but once you follow your circadian rhythm, you are actually following the natural pattern of your body. And
Mm.
once you're fully rested, recharged, because you've slept in the right time and, well, then you have a lot less need for external energy, which is what eating is. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of kind of that, the body's stressed, there's cortisol, I don't have enough energy. The natural tendencies, we need food to compensate for that.
Mm.
And with the abundance of food around, it often goes very wrong.
Mm.
So yeah, sleeping well, I mean, in my own experience, just by starting to sleep well, I lost 20 pounds.
Yeah, man, I love that. And it's after the experience, I picked up a book called Why We Sleep, and he was talking about the
Hmm.
circadian rhythm
Yeah.
and, like you said, following the
Matt
sun.
Walker. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Man, great book if anyone hasn't read it. But speaking of books, you also have been known to gift the Tao Te Ching to people if maybe you sense that they need some redirection. What is it about that text that resonated with you? How did it help you? And then, why do you gift it?
Yeah, well, you've done your research. So the Tao Te Ching, there is, first of all, it is a text that had a profound impact on me because every single word there, I mean, they're very small kind of, mini texts that
Hmm.
are super contemplative. And even if you break them down and if you just follow 2 or 3 words, there is depth that just you sink in. And so
Mm,
it is, to me, has been one of the best way to get into contemplation
mm,
and meditation. And so the book is profound, but what I do like about it is whether that those texts unlock something for somebody or not, it is super short.
mhm.
To some extent, if you give somebody, I don't know, the Bible or the
Or
Quran or the
outlive.
live it's a long it's there's a commitment there to
Yeah.
to produce something. Unless you're super motivated, you already wanted to do it, it's going to be a different approach. Without a Jing, you just need to read one page, which takes you
Mm,
45 seconds.
mhm.
And there's going to be an immediate impact if it resonates.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Sometimes the bite-sized chunks are the ones that have the biggest impact, and relating this back, I mean, totally
He was
adjacent
he was a Twitter before Twitter.
yeah, yeah, right, 160 characters or whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You can have change the world. Look at Elon, look at, DOJ, Donald Trump, not to get too political, but taking that small impact or small set of wording can have a large impact in the AI world in LLMs. AIs don't read like humans. They don't read left to right, top to bottom. They process in chunks of context. So what we're seeing is citations are actually looking at text that is written in a way where the full answer is basically in the header preceding text. So like biting out chunks like that, not all snackable content is unhealthy for you. Like it's
Mhm.
actually
Right.
that's what's being cited in LLMs right now. You've been in some of the, you've been in rooms with some of the most influential people like health leaders, like hospital systems, insurance companies. Do you believe that the system actually wants to prevent chronic disease, or does the system benefit too much from treating it? Do you think there's going to be a shift in humanity?
I'm hopeful there's going to be a shift. I do believe that people within the system want to change.
Yeah.
I do believe that the system does not want to change. It is
Hmm.
just set up and it's a colossus that is moving according to its internal logic, which is
Hmm.
all driven by economic benefit. And it's very hard to redo this.
Hmm.
And I think the only force that can probably change it, and it's already happening, it's people changing their own behavior. People shifting from, I'll just pay my insurance, and if something happens, they'll pay for treating me to I'm going to take care of my health so I never get sick. And that is what I believe is going to change the system. It's going to take a while because, particularly in our field, which is food as medicine, food, personalized nutrition, et cetera, you don't need to change just the healthcare. You need to change the food system, how
Mm,
food is produced and distributed. You need to change agriculture. So when you think about that, those are three of the largest industries with very ossified way of doing things. And so, but
mm,
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I do talk to a lot of people that want to change. I'm also hopeful because I see Gen Z and even Generation Alpha, they already starting to, in a very pronounced way, say, hey, I'm going to take care of my health. I really want like good food that's high quality and healthy is very important for me. And
mhm.
that leads to prevention, and that eventually will change the economic incentives in the system. So, let's be hopeful.
Yeah, it does all tie to economic incentives that were built on a world that had no clue. They didn't have all the data points that you have on food and how it affects long term health. We just didn't have the data. But how do you tie that back? Someone in your position who is running a company that does have economic incentive based on good. How are you approaching larger companies like some of your B2B clients like Amazon, let's say? How are you
Yeah.
approaching it and saying like, look, this is economically advantageous and it benefits your employees?
Yeah, look, we go with the market. Obviously, we have a direction, we have a mission, but we're not forcing things. So we go to the people that are willing, that want to change, that are open, et cetera. And so all of our clients are companies that, for one reason or another, have decided this is important and they've allocated budgets. And so we like water, filling in the holes.
Mm,
And so whenever there's a need, we go for it. We're not trying to, I mean, and hopefully, like just like water, you kind of, work away at the stones of the resistance and eventually, you break through. But for example, insurance companies are very hard to change.
hmm
We've tried for years and years and we haven't seen a take. But
mm,
do I think it's going to happen? Yes. You just don't know when. Maybe it's AI, maybe kind of speeding that process and it might be 2 or 3 years, but I can easily see it being 10. But at the same time, there are companies like in Amazon you mentioned, and they don't use it for their employees, they use it for Alexa.
mm.
But, they've definitely seen benefit there. And so they're using the data.
My fiance works at Amazon as a risk manager, and we also have the Alexa here. I don't want to say her
Hmm.
name because she'll
Yeah,
start
you wake her
screaming.
up. You wake her up. Yeah.
The beast, the sleeping monster. Yeah. So I know that there are employee programs internally, and it's really cool to see that integration with their software and their hardware.
Mhm.
As this, I would say you're a humanity plus style entrepreneur. You're mission driven, you measure impact by how many people you reach, but you're also listening to the market. I'm curious, if somebody handed you, by the way, and you did it all without VC funding in this sort
Right.
of world where everybody is pushing for that, 12, 18-month exit strategy. I mean, myself included, I get pulled into that world. It's very exciting. How do you see building companies today and what do you wish more startup founders would take into consideration?
Yeah, I think it's happening on its own. I think AI is actually empowering entrepreneurs to finally do what they need to do without having to be beholden to outside capital. Right?
Mm,
I mean, there's talk about $1 billion company with one founder that,
mhm,
it works with 50 agents. I truly believe that's not too far away.
mhm,
And so now you don't need to go back for capital because, and that's another system, the venture capital system, which when it originally started in the Silicon Valley in the 60s, was truly venture capital. It was like risk capital, people pulling money out of their pockets and giving them
mm,
without preferences, without any conditions. It's like, hey, I believe in you. Here is some money. If you fail, I lose the money. If you win, we both win. That spirit's gone because it became just a financial play, and every venture capital firm has limited partners which own their return, so they
mm,
incentivized to do preference, et cetera, et cetera. And then the VC has its own business model to run, which is not necessarily we make you successful as a company. It is we make our portfolio successful and
mm,
we'll push you. And if you don't perform, okay, so be it. We
Yeah.
you lose. And that is very destructive to entrepreneurs, especially people that haven't been around and, need a little bit of kind of psychological resistance and stability. So I think this is changing because AI now empowers people to go do things without having to raise money. And
Hmm.
I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that feel very liberated. Now, there's going to be obviously a downside of that. There's way too many companies that are going to show up and whatnot, but that's the beauty of competition, right? So
Yeah.
it's,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think to answer your question, I think that's it's going in the right direction. I think that's what startup founders should do is try to build something that will have an impact that really excites you, that every day you wake up and you're so excited to go work and then rest is going to come together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the ultimate fuel. As long as we have sound sleep, a healthy diet, maybe some
Sure.
meditation in there to separate the internal from the external world so we can process, we can respond and not react. Man, I think we're changing the world very slowly, but you know what? Just as technology accelerates, so will emotional intelligence right alongside artificial intelligence. Just a couple months behind. I think so.
Right.
So, last question here, Victor, as we wrap up. If going back to the VC, if someone gave you $50 million now, what would you do with that money? No strings attached. What would you do with that you can't do now?
I would start a foundation. And it's kind of like in the back of my mind. I just haven't had the time to focus on that. But essentially, what I would like to do is change the way people eat around the world. And
Mm,
there's going to be some things that need to be done around agriculture, regenerative agriculture, so that food is grown that is super healthy and can be delivered below the price of a Big Mac. So there's a
mm,
lot of technology to be employed there. I think there's technologies take for farms, supply chain innovation, deliveries with drones, just in time, just picked food, etc. Lots of primary research need to be done around the nutrient content of foods. About 170 molecules like the macro and micronutrients and things like omega 3s, but there's over 26,000 molecules in foods. Yeah,
mm,
somebody, what in garlic helps fight a common cold? Nobody knows. I mean, lots of indigenous people know it does, but what is it? We don't know. So there's going to be primary research. And then there's going to be work to be done on true personalization, which is already happening. So for me, those are three mini moonshots
mm,
that can be combined into one. And there is a need for kind of an initial kickstarting the process in all those mini moonshots to change the food system and and the way people treat food as health, as medicine.
mm.
And so if I got $50 million, I would put them in, building kind of an institute with
Yeah.
researchers, with entrepreneurs to solve that problem.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I will set up the wire transfer from my foundation
Sure. Yeah,
and yeah,
absolutely.
should reach you by next week. No, I think that the vision that you have and the work that you've already done, you've laid a lot of the groundwork with the data and with the communication styles and with bridging these partnerships, being in the New York Times. You are one of the people who has influenced that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, reshaping how we think about food. And yeah, it's going to be a brighter world. Thank you for being a great
Absolutely.
guest on eCoffee, Victor.
Yeah. Thank you for the exciting conversations.
Yeah, it was great to have you in my audience. I will talk to you next time.
Until next time.